What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all of you guys' questions answered about sterile processing and the SPD department. I posted a few shorts that did very well, so thank you all for the engagement, talking about my internship as a sterile processing technician. And a lot of you had some really good questions, and I know I promised a long video. It's just been a lot going on, but I finally am here trying to answer every single question for you guys. I have my notebook here. Hopefully I can touch all the bases. If not, you can just drop down in the comments a question if I did not answer it. So if you're new, my name is Sheree J. Thank you so much for clicking on my channel. And if you're not new, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for coming back. Let's get right into the video. So the most obvious question, what on earth is SPD? Most people think, and I thought this as well, that it stood for Sterile Processing Department, but it actually stands for Sterile Processing and Distribution. And what sterile processing is the service within a hospital in which medical and surgical supplies, as well as equipment, are cleaned, sterilized, prepared, processed, stored, and issued for patient care. So to sum that all up, if someone is receiving surgery, or it doesn't even have to be surgery, it could just be the emergency room and they need a tool that needs to be sterilized and processed the right way, we are the department that takes care of all of that. So stressing the importance of SPD, if the SPD department did not exist, the hospitals literally would not be able to run. Because, I mean, yeah, the nurses and doctors are just as important, don't get me wrong, but all of the equipment is in sterile processing, you know? So if we don't do our job, the flow of the hospital will suffer greatly. Just to stress the importance of the department, because it's not a well-known department. Like when I tell people like, oh, I'm a sterile processing technician, they're like, what is that? Like, never heard of it before. So it is an extremely important job. So that is the full definition of SPD. So the next question that I got a lot from you all is, what made me choose SPD and how did I find out about it? So I found out about it through my mom, who works in supply. So normally the supply room and SPD are next to each other or on the same floor, because we send up all the supplies to OR, ER, whoever. So we kind of have to like stay in contact with each other. And a guy that worked in her department went to school for SPD and switched over there. Now, what made me choose SPD was I was looking for a career, right? Just looking at the job markets and things like that. Most of my experience comes from customer service. Like I've worked in a hotel, worked in a country club, restaurants, things like that, you know, like real hospitality-esque. And just after the pandemic and everything, and, you know, just looking at like the way the world is going, I'm like, I need a career. I need something that is foolproof. I need something that requires actual skill, so I can't be replaced by a machine or whatever, right? And when she told me about it, I had already been looking for like different trades and things, but the only one that really jumped out at me was to be a dental hygienist. But that takes like 2 to 3 years. And I was like, I don't really have 2 to 3 years. I need something that I can get done in like 9 months or less. So when she told me about it, I looked it up and was looking at what they did and everything. And I was like, okay, this actually sounds like a thing, you know? So I was looking into it more. And once I learned about the travel side of things, I was sold. So that's what made me choose SPD, and that is how I found out about it. Now, this was the burning question that everyone wanted to know. What is the pay like? Now, when I tell you guys the pay, don't click off this video, okay? Listen, hear me out, all right? The average starting pay for a sterile processing technician with no experience in hospital or anything ranges from about $16 to $18, give or take 15 to 20, right? Now, the thing with that is there are other certifications you can get, To make your pay go up, you can be a sterile processing educator, or you can be a travel technician that can raise your income as well. So again, this is starting pay. You know, this is like no experience. You don't have a clue, nothing. Okay. It is a change for me. And I did consider the pay when I was doing this. And I was like, you know what? If I stick to it in 2 years, the pay will mean absolutely nothing because I'll be making 3 times that amount. So that is the pay for all of you that were wondering. Now, this is a question that some of you didn't ask this directly, but you like phrased it kind of this way. Who is SPD for? And this is a great question because I want to give you all the reality of it. If you were considering SPD and you have a stable career, and when I say stable, I mean your job can't be replaced by a machine or a robot, and you are making well above the average pay. Like you're not hurting for anything, you're not struggling, you have money left at the end of the month. Stable career people. I would not advise you to leave your career for SPD unless it's something you are absolutely passionate about. And I say that because of what I just said previously, the pay, you know. But like I said, if you're passionate about it, go for it, you know. Now, if you are someone like me who's kind of like, I'm 25. So if you're someone like me who's kind of like up in age, but not old enough, and like you have work experience, but you're looking for like a career to start, these are the people that I would advise to look into SPD. Because you have a little bit more wiggle room, you know, and then when you add in other life factors like kids and things like that, if you're willing to go 2 to 3 years with your pay being a little bit lower, then this might be it for you. But if you know, like, you absolutely cannot sacrifice that, I totally understand and honestly wouldn't advise it. Now, keep in mind, this is a hospital, okay? When you work in a hospital, hospitals have great benefits, and they have tuition assistance, and you know what I'm saying? They have all those things. So yeah, the pay might be a little bit lower, but you're getting into an industry, like I said in the beginning, that is foolproof. So it's just a few things to consider, and I'll touch base on this again when I talk about the travel technicians. But that is who I would recommend SPD to be for and also not for. So the next question is all about programs and cost of the program and internship. And this was the #1 question that you all were asking. And here's the thing about the program. Some programs are longer, some are shorter, but they all have like their pros and cons. So it just depends on like what your schedule looks like. My personal program cost me $825 plus the cost of scrubs. I had to buy my own scrubs, right? It was 11 classes. I went to class once a week on a Saturday for 6 hours. Now, I did see some other classes where they went to class like 2 or 3 times a week for like 50 minutes, hour and a half type of situation. And the length of the class was longer. So instead of the class being 11 classes, it was like 30 because the classes are shorter, right? Now, my class, I got a workbook and the actual like study book, and the internship was optional. Now, for other programs, when I called to check, some programs, their programs were like a year and the internship was not optional. It was part of the class. You had to do it. So some of you were asking like, you know, did my school provide this internship? They did, but it was not mandatory. But not every program is like that. I would highly recommend, if you're considering this, before you commit to a program, make sure they have a way to get you into an internship. This is not an industry where you can get in just on the fly. I think hospitals are like that in general. It doesn't even have to be SPD. It can be a nurse, it can be whatever. You need to make sure you have some hours, and that's going to come back up later on as well. So I'm going to stick a pin in that about the hours as well. There were a few programs that took like 2 years. I would not recommend a 2-year program for sterile processing. That's way too long. I think 9 months at most. You know, it's not one of those trades where like it takes that long. You don't need a 2-year program. If you see one, try to find a different one before you commit to that one, because you truly don't need the 2 years. Now, licensing and certifications. You do need a license to be an SPD technician, but you don't need to have the license in order to get a job. So let's unpack that a little bit. So in order to get your license as a central registered sterile processing technician, you need 400 working or clinical hours. But if you pass the test without those hours, they will give you something that is called a provisional license, which means I understand the basics of SPD, I just don't have the hours and work experience to back it up. When they give you that provisional license, you have 6 months from the day you pass the test to get those 400 hours. And I know that sounds like a lot, but 400 hours, I think it's like if you work full time for like 2 months. So you can get it in no time. Now, backtracking a little bit to what I said about the internship, my internship was 180 hours total. I need 400 in order to get my standard tech license. So I'm almost halfway there, which is why I stress the internship if you can get it. Now, my internship, once you got a job, your internship was over, but I didn't end up getting a job until after my internship was over. I don't know if all internships will be like that. I would find that out first. But that is how it works. You need 400 working hours. And again, most hospital jobs, you probably do need some type of like clinical experience. I saw a few videos, when I was looking into this about people saying you don't have to go to school. I just went and took the test and got my license. That may work for some people, but I would not recommend that. Solely because you do want to get that little bit of, you want to get your feet wet before you just jump into somebody's hospital with a license thinking you know what to do. You know what I'm saying? The internship is there so you can learn without fault, The internship was unpaid for me at least, but I was paid in my hours, if that makes sense. Some of you asked that question too. Was it paid? It's not monetarily paid, but it is paid on the back end with your hours, because those hours contribute towards my 400 hours when I go to take my test. I have not taken the test yet. I do have a job though, so I would not recommend not going to school, because when you're in school, you can ask questions and you can, get a feel for it from a teacher that has been there. And, and the teacher that I had was great. And actually, my teacher is the one that I work for now. So that's funny how that worked out. But you want to be able to connect, so at least your teacher can give you like a one-on-one perspective of like, hey, I've been doing this however long, this was my experience, ask me all the questions you want, So, I mean, if you want to take the route of just getting the book and taking the test, you can, but I personally would not recommend it. I would go to school. I would do what you need to do. Don't try to skip a step, take those steps to make sure you don't miss anything. Now, there are 2 types of licensing boards. One of them is CBSPD, which stands for the Certification Board of Sterile Processing and Distribution. And the other one is ISHM, or also known as HSPA. ISHM stands for the International Association of Healthcare Service Material Management, and HSPA stands for Healthcare Sterile Processing Association. Those are the same things, just like a little name change situation. If you look them up, they're the same person. So the difference between both of them, because a lot of people in my class were asking like, well, which testing body is better? And my teacher was like, it's really not who's better. They just have different requirements. So like CBSPD, you can only take the test 4 times a year. There's only 4 times a year where they take the test. Isham, however, you can take the test every day of the week except for Sundays, you know. And then for your continuing education hours, Isham, I think you have to submit them every year, and then CBSPD is every 5 years. It's 60 continuing education hours, but like I said, Isham, it's like 12 per year, but CBSPD is 60, but it's every 5 years, so it still weighs out to be 12 continuing education hours per year. You know, just little things like that. And then depending on the area you're in, I noticed that when I was on my job search, certain areas and different types of hospitals, whether it was like a trauma hospital or just like a surgery center, like an outpatient surgery center, some of them were asking for both. Not both, like you had to have both, but if you had either one, they were fine. Some of them were just saying one or the other. It really just depends on your area. But I feel like with either one, you're fine. I personally am going to go through Isham because that is who my teacher is affiliated with, and she actually helped write the test for Isham. She's not giving me answers, okay? Don't go there. She's not giving me answers, but from her and me talking with her, I think I'm going to go with Isham, but from her, you're fine with either one. So it's just different things depending on how far you want to go in SPD. Next question is, are there other certifications you can get? Yes. So the first one that you get, that everybody gets, is the CRCST, which is the Central Registered something Sterile Technician. I can't remember what the other C stands for. That is the baseline for all SPD techs. But the other certifications that they have are CIS, which is a Certified Instrument Specialist, which just means you can identify like a certain amount of instruments. CER, which is a Certified Endoscope Reprocessor. Endoscopes are what they use for like colonoscopies and stuff like that. You need a certification in order to process those. So like me right now, I can't touch those. I can't have my name on it. It's not going to be valid, even if it is sterile. You have to have a license to do that. And for the CERs, you can get a job solely as that. My teacher told us that like some people started with SPD, and there are places like dialysis places and stuff like that that are looking solely for people with the CER certification. So that is another one you can receive. CHL, a Certified Healthcare Leader, which just means teaching. You can be a teacher. And CISS, which is a Certified Industrial Sterile Specialist. I forgot what this was, but there are a few others, but these are like the main ones. If you look them up, these are the main ones you can receive. The next question I wrote down was clinical hours. I touched on this already, but I'll revisit it. Like I said, you do need 400 clinical hours in order to receive your license, but they will give you a provisional license if you take the test, pass it, and you don't have the hours. But I'm pretty sure if you don't get the hours within 6 months, I think you have to retest, something of that nature. You won't be able to keep your license no matter what if you don't have those hours submitted. So me personally, I have not taken the test yet because I wanted to get a job first, because I was like, even if I pass the test, if I don't get a job in 6 months, then I'm like, that license essentially doesn't mean anything. Now, for you, that might not be the route you want to take, and I totally understand. My next question is actually about my job search, so let's get into that. The job search. The job search was not easy. Not easy at all. Like, I went on interviews and everything, and they all were telling me the same thing. You don't have enough experience. Don't have enough experience. Don't have enough experience. And I don't know if that really was true, or they just wanted me to have my license, you know? So if you're having some trouble finding a job, and you're like, you know what, they all keep telling me the same thing, then go ahead, take the test. You know, they might want to take you sooner. In my case, I actually ended up moving. This is how all this happened. So I was applying for jobs all around. I even applied where I did my internship at after my internship was done. Would you believe where I did my internship at, they would not hire me? because of the exact same thing. They said, you don't have enough experience. And I'm like, I just did a 3-month internship here. Are you kidding me? You know? But everything ended up working out because I ended up moving. And the hospital that my teacher is the manager at, I knew you had to live within a certain mileage because she said it in class one day, and I did not. So that's why I never applied for that hospital. But once I moved, I was like, well, it's worth a shot. And she recognized my name and called me. I did an interview, and I ended up getting the job a couple days later. So when it comes to your job search, if they're constantly telling you the same thing, you don't have enough experience, I would, bite the bullet and just maybe go ahead and take the test in addition to an internship and then go from there. But I also would connect with people. Your teacher, whoever taught your class, if they know someone, maybe they can write you a referral to the hospitals they work at or worked at previously. If you have any nurse friends, like any RN friends or med student friends, like if you know anybody in a hospital, connect with them to see if they can squeeze you in. I'll tell you what my teacher told me, because she went to school to be a surgery tech first, then she switched to SPD, and she said it took her 10 months to get her first surgery technician job. So just to put it into perspective for you, this could be a long awaited thing. It could be a short-term thing. It just depends on your area and what they're looking for and stuff like that. But I'm not saying that to discourage you all. I'm just trying to lay out the reality of things, and had I not moved, I wouldn't have been able to get, this job or even apply for it or whatever, because I didn't live close enough, and the hospitals where I lived previously were not feeling me. So I would use your network heavy, LinkedIn, everything that you can use. But again, hospitals are one of those things. It's hard to get in, but once you're in, you're in. When I was doing my onboarding paperwork, the lady that worked in HR, she was like, oh, what position are you doing again? I'm like, oh, I'm in SPD. And she was like, I started in SPD 30 years ago. And she was like, I moved around the hospital and I ended up here in HR. So again, it was one of those things. It takes a while to get in, but once you're in, you're in. So don't get discouraged. Just use your network, take the test if they're giving you some trouble, and just wait it out and make sure your resume is top notch. So any additional thoughts that I have, I think SPD is a good start in healthcare. If you are somebody who doesn't want to be like a CNA or medical coding and billing, I know those are the two main jobs that people go to do. But if you're don't really want to take that route and you want to do something different, SPD might be a good start. Or let's say you do want to go be a registered nurse or a doctor. SPD would be a great segue into that, because you're going to be using these tools and stuff anyway, and it just would give you a different perspective, and like I said, get your foot in the door, so that way when you do go to be once you do graduate with your RN degree and everything, you can kind of have that background. They're like, oh yeah, I worked as a sterile processing technician. This is how my experience carries over into nursing, doctor, what have you. So I think it's a really good start. And it's a stable trade to get through school. So even if you don't want to go be a RN or anything in the medical field, let's just say you just need something to get you through school so you can have a job. SPD could even be that. You could want to go be an English teacher, and you need a job just to get you through college. Totally understand. This would probably be a short-term job that you can have to get you through school for sure. And I already touched on this before in my job search question. You can branch off into other areas. You don't have to stay in SPD if you don't want to. You can, just work there and then, get in the hospital and see what other type of jobs there are. Because Google can, you can Google something, but when you actually work in a hospital and see these different types of technicians and nurses and doctors and people walking around every single day, and you can actually connect with them and ask them, how they got started and how they feel about their position. It's a much different experience as opposed to Google. So again, It's a nice start, get your foot in the door, and you don't have to stick with it if you don't want to, but it can get you by, to say the least. And one more thing before I forget, I want to touch on the travel technicians. So mostly every hospital job has a travel part of it. There's traveling nurses, traveling doctors, and this is ultimately what sold me on being an SPD technician, because once I saw the amount of money that travel technicians make, I was like, where do I sign? Where do I sign? Now, here's the thing about a travel technician though. You have to work in SPD. You don't have to, but most of the agencies prefer it if you work in SPD for at least 2 years so you can get that footing. And my teacher even said, because she has traveled before as well, she said, when you go, you're on your own. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to just jump in with little to no direction. It's like, hey, I'm signing on. You know, this is the tour of the department, and they're just going to send you on your way to decontamination or whatever. So it's not like, oh, I'm just going to go be a travel tech. Like, no, you have to know what you're doing, you know? But the amount of money they make is, yeah. Google it, okay? The amount of money they make, I just couldn't pass up. Couldn't pass it up. So in 2 years, that is the goal. I just wanted to touch base on that before I forgot. And then the last part of this video, thank you all for sticking around. If you've made it this far, comment. They have an orange emoji. Comment any type of orange emoji. If you made it this far, let me know. So these are some of the subscriber questions and comments I wanted to take directly from the videos that I've posted. The first one is it easy? Which is a pretty straightforward standard question. I would say it's a good 50-50. Some of it is easy, like picking cases, right? So like you get a stack of cases, say there's 10 surgeries the next day. You know, you find anything that says SPD next to it, you pick those, put them on a case cart, tape the form that you have to the cart, and then they send it up the next day. Nothing crazy. I would say the hardest part about SPD is learning the instruments. Oh my God. I never knew there were so many pairs of scissors that existed, okay? There's hundreds of instruments. This isn't to say that you have to memorize all of them. Your hospital, depending on how big or small or what they specialize in, may not even use all of this stuff. But that is the hardest part. And if you do go to school, I would highly recommend getting a book that has the surgery instruments in it so you can start learning those right away, because for me, that was definitely the hardest part. So is it easy? I would say it's a good 50-50, you know, but it's nothing that you can't learn. I'll say that, you know, it's nothing that you can't learn. You just have to have the willingness to learn. Next question from a subscriber is, what does a typical day look like? Which I love that question. So a typical day in SPD is when you show up. Normally surgeries start around 7 a.m. But again, depending on the hospital, if it's like an outpatient center, it could be 9 or something like that. Most surgeries at like a big hospital where they have like 10, 12 surgeries a day and one surgeon is doing 5 of them. I have seen that. I've literally seen surgeons do 8 surgeries in one day, which I'm like, is there like a limit on how many surgeries a surgeon can do in one day? But the most I've seen is 8. So in the morning, you will, anything that was in decontamination overnight, you assemble those things in the morning, and then the OR will send down the new papers for the surgeries that you need to pick cases for the next day. And as the surgeries go on, the OR will start sending down those dirty tools and things, and that's when decontamination starts. So the hospital that I interned at, the first surgery was always at like 7 a.m. By like 9:30, that surgery was probably over and they were sending that case down. Midday, decontamination was like every like 10 minutes we're getting a new tray of like dirty items. So decontamination, you wash everything, you put it through the sonics, or if it's a loaner, you put it through that machine, and then it will come out on the other side to assembly. And then assembly will make sure all of the tools are there. Each surgery kit will have like a list of things that has to be in there. So prime example, let's just say you're doing a C-section for a woman that's having a baby. A C-section has to have like this certain amount of tools in it. This is why we need to know the tools, and assembly will make sure that all of those tools are in it. So if it says it needs, 2 Russian forceps and 4 whatevers, we have to make sure on the assembly side that all of those are in there, because again, if they open that case for the C-section the next day and it's missing a forceps, the OR will call, okay, and they will not use that because it's already open and it's not correct. Because if they need 2 forceps, if they need 2 Russian forceps and they have one and they're missing one, they're going to be calling. But the surgery techs double check sterile processing's work. So before the surgery techs will open up everything and count everything that we did. So everybody is like accountable for everybody else, if that makes sense. And then as the day goes on, you pick the cases for the next day, and it's just like a repeat cycle, day in and day out. And then somebody asked me about the hours, like what hours does a sterile processing technician work? So most hospitals run on the same schedule, like a 7 to 3 or like a 6 to 2, and then like a 3 to 11. Some hospitals do have overnight technicians, some do not. If it's a much larger hospital, like a trauma unit hospital, and they have a really large ER, there most likely will be an overnight tech, because this hospital has way too much traffic to not have a technician on hand 24 hours a day. Some hospitals that are big but not quite as big will just have somebody from maybe like 5 a.m. to 11, and then like 11 to 5 a.m. The nurses and stuff can come down there and pick what it is they need. So that is the hours of the SPD technician. So if that works for you, it might be something for you to look out for. Someone asked, is it a hands-on exam as well as written? That's a really good question, because I asked the same question when I was in class. I was like, is it like a hands-on thing where we have to like identify certain tools? No, it is not. It is only written. Coming from my teacher, most of the questions on the written exam have to do with like sanitation and things like that. Not really like what's the name of this instrument. The hands-on experience will come as you do an internship and as you get a job. So no, there is no hands-on, just written. I think I answered this already, but I'll answer it one more time. Did my school provide the internship? Yes, they did. I would highly, highly recommend finding out if your program will give you access to an internship, because trying to find one on your own, I don't know if it's hard or not, but I feel like why even take the chance? Like, just pick a program that has access to that for you already. But yes, my program did provide the internship. So the last 3 questions I actually came up with on my own, because I figured, like, what would I ask myself if I was starting this process all over again? And this is kind of like a 2-part question, but I would ask, is it a dying career and can you be replaced? Now, and when I say replaced, I mean like by like a robot or AI. Is it a dying career? Let's start with that first. I don't think it is. I will look for some stats. I don't think it is, though. The last time I checked, it was not. It's not a dying career. Nothing in the hospital is. It's a hospital. We saw that a hospital is going to be open, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The hospital is never going to close unless it's like an absolute emergency, and even then they're going to go to a hospital that's open. So is it a dying career? No, the hospital always needs people no matter what. Now, on the back end of that question, can you be replaced by AI or a robot? When you look at the sterile processing department, you would think a robot probably could do this, and they probably could. I'm not denying that. But will the hospitals allow it? I highly doubt it. Highly, highly doubt it. Because, again, you're dealing with people's life, okay? If this equipment, if you imagine you laying on a surgery table, split open, right? Hate to be vulgar, but I'm just trying to put this into perspective, right? If someone were to ask you, do you want the robot instruments or the human ones that they checked with their own human eyes, which one would you pick? You probably would pick the human. I hope you would. You probably will pick the human one, right? This isn't a job that I feel like a robot, like I said, probably could do it, but I don't think the hospitals will allow it. I don't think the technology is there yet, because they want people that are physically there checking this stuff. Because again, you're laying on the hospital bed, you're split open. If they take a pair of scissors and put it on the inside of your body, if something is wrong with that, right, that needs to be found out before they put it inside of you, okay? Like, they need to know that. And I just don't think that they would allow a robot to make decisions like that. But it's a very valid question, considering the AI that we have seen within the last couple of months, even, let alone years. We don't really know what's around the corner, but I personally think you're okay. And this last question, I wanted to touch on it because this actually just happened to me the other day. And the question is, thoughts when I tell people what I do. Now, these past couple months have been rough, because when I tell people like, oh, I'm in school for sterile processing, or I'm a sterile processing intern, they're like, what is that? Like, not a single person has known what SPD is, right? So I kind of got discouraged a little bit, because I'm like trying to, I have anxiety or whatever, and I'm trying to like explain to people like, oh, like I clean surgery equipment, and they're like, okay, like, it's like it doesn't click because they don't physically like see it with their own eyes. And then the other day, like, I had someone supposed to be close to me say like, oh, a kid could do that. And it really, really rubbed me the wrong way. But then I was like, again, I know more about this field than what I can put into words, right? So if you're planning on doing this and, you brought it up to someone and they're like, what is that? Like, blah, blah, blah. It's a very, very important job. When people think of hospitals, the only people they think of is doctors and nurses. That's it. But what people fail to realize is there is a whole nother world of operations that we do not see that work in these different departments of the hospitals. The doctors and nurses are at the bedside. That's it. They don't do anything else. There's a whole world of people inside of a hospital that need their credit as well. You are an essential worker. You are a healthcare worker, no matter what anyone says, even if you're not a registered nurse or a doctor, okay? So I just brushed that comment off because, again, like I said, I know more about it. So if you're considering doing this and you're not really getting good responses from people, do the research yourself. If the numbers and everything are lining up for you and it feels good in your spirit, I say go for it. That is the end of this video. I hope I answered every single question for you guys. Again, thank you all so much for the engagement on those videos. I had no idea that those videos were going to do so well. I literally was just like, what, let me film this because this is my life, and it just took off. So I owe you guys this video. Here you go. If I did not answer anything, or if you need clarification on something, please let me know in the comments. I will gladly respond. I love answering you guys' comments. Like, we're like internet cousins. That's what we're gonna call ourselves. We're like internet cousins. So my internet cousins, if you need more clarification or have like an additional question, let me know in the comments. I will definitely get back to it. That is all I have for now. I will be posting more sterile processing content because your girl got a job now. So that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting to make this video until I actually had a job, and now I have one. So thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel for more. And I'll see y'all on the next one.